Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Please join us today in the study of Srimad Bhagavatam. Today we'll be studying Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11, Chapter 25, the three modes of nature and beyond. Please join us for Jai Radha Madhav prayers. Hare Krishna. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girvaradhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girvaradhari. Yashodanandana Vrajjana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Vrajjana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rāma, Hare Rāma, Rāma Rāma, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rāma, Hare Rāma, Rāma Rāma, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rāma, Hare Rāma, Rāma Rāma, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rāma, Hare Rāma, Rāma Rāma, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rāma, Hare Rāma, Rāma Rāma, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rāma, Hare Rāma, Rāma Rāma, Hare Hare, Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girvaradhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girvaradhari. Yashodanandana Vrajjana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Vrajjana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rāma Hare Rāma, Rāma Rāma Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rāma, Rāma Rāma Hare Hare, Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari, Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari, Yashodanandana Brajana Ranjana, Yashodanandana Brajana Ranjana, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Please join us in the so today we'll be studying Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11, Chapter 25, the three modes of nature and beyond. Please join us in Guru Pranati, Mangalachan prayers together. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udiryet. Shavatam Swakata Krishna Punya Shavana Kirtanaha Hridayantasto Hya Bhadrani Vidhunote Suhasatam Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatir Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Nashtaki. Hare Krishna. Please join us in the recitation of the first verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, 11th Canto, Chapter 25, the three modes of nature and beyond. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha
Gudanam Sammishranam
Gudanam Sammishranam
Pumanyena Yatha Bhavet
Pumanyena Yatha Bhavet
Tanme Purusha Varyedam
Tanme Purushvaryedam
Upadharaya Shamsataha.
Upadaraya Sanshata.
Please.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha
Gudanam Asammishranam
Gunanam Sammishranam
Pumanyena Yatha Bhavet
Pumanyena Yatha Bhavet
Tanme Purushvaryedam
Tanme Purusha Varyedam
Updharaya Sanshata.
Upadharaya Samshataha. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead said,
The Supreme Personality of Godhead said,
Gunanam,
Gudanam,
of the modes of nature,
of the modes of nature,
Asammishranam,
Asammishranam,
in their unmixed state,
in their unmixed state,
Puman,
Puman,
a person,
Yena,
by which mode,
Yatha,
how, Bhavet, he becomes, Tat, that, may, by me, Purusha Varya, O best among men, Idam, this, Upadharaya,
Avadharaya.
Please try to understand.
Please try to understand.
Shamsataha,
Shamsata.
as I speak.
As I speak.
Translation by the disciples of His Divine Grace, Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O best among men, please listen as I describe to you how the living entity attains a particular nature by association with individual material modes. Purport. The word asam mishra indicates that which is not mixed with anything else. Lord Kṛṣṇa now explains how each of the three material modes, goodness, passion and ignorance, acting separately causes a conditioned soul to manifest a particular type of existence. The living entity is ultimately transcendental to the modes of nature, being part and parcel of Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa. But in conditioned life, he manifests material qualities. This is described in the following verses. Hare Krishna. Please join us for Guru Pranati together. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashatya Deshitarine Om Ajnana-timirandasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Mukham karoti vachalam Pangum langhayate girim Yat kripa tadham vande Shri Gurum dinataranam Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. So, chapter 25 in 11th canto is where we are going to learn how to easily transcend the three modes of material nature and begin the real life of devotional service, loving devotional service unto Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So here, this is also part of Uddhav Gita. So chapter 6 through chapter 29 is Uddhav Gita. First 5 chapters in 11th canto refer to the setting of the scene as how Lord is making the plan of going back home, back to Godhead, along with his eternal associates and many of his pure devotees. And in the 30th chapter, Lord himself plans his departure. So again, that's why in this canto, 11th canto is sometimes referred to as Uddhav Gita because of the instructions. Now, Lord speaking Uddhav Gita, when Lord when spoke at Kurukshetra to Arjun, that's called Bhagavad Gita, because that was to enlighten Arjun to reestablish him in his position as a Kshatriya, his prescribed duties. He brought in sync his Swadharma, his prescribed duty, with his Sanatan Dharma, his eternal religion, right? So, we living entities are eternal servant of the Lord. So, again, the eternal religion is also called Sanatan Dharma. So, this synchronization happened there. But here, Lord is giving this instruction to Uddhav. And when he is giving these instructions to Uddhav, it is for Uddhav to take this, these instructions and be a messenger of Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa, to go to Badrika Ashram and impart that message to Narayan Rishi. So that is the purpose. And because Uddhav is carrying this message and then passing it on to Narayan Rishi, because of that significance, it is called Uddhav Gita. Now, in Uddhav Gita, we have already covered Bhikshu Gita, right? So this was the Brahmana who had renounced everything because he got frustrated with his life. He was miserly and he actually engaged in mercantile activities, and he gave up his, he actually lost all his wealth and his family members left him. So he was abandoned, and in great anxiety he became a renunciate. So in that state, when he was singing that in this material world, no one is really yours except for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that's a realization at the Jnana Yoga level. And we also studied there that one has to take devotional service to attain transcendental bliss. Because in Jnana Yoga and Karma Yoga and even Ashtanga Yoga, one cannot experience transcendental bliss. One can attain some understanding of the absolute truth in the form of Brahman or Paramatma, Supersoul, or, as eternal, Brahman effulgence coming from the body of Lord Shri Krishna. Yet at the same time, it's only in Bhakti Yoga that one experiences that bliss form, Sat Chit Anand. So Sat is eternal, Chit is full of knowledge, and Anand is transcendental bliss. So it has to come to that personal realization. One has to come to the personal realization to experience transcendental bliss and engage in loving devotional service with love, with gratitude, with humility, and with, constantly in the mood of satisfying the master of the senses, Lord Hrishikesha. So Jivera Swarupaya Krishna Nityadas. So what is the constitutional position of a living entity? Eternal servant of Lord Shri Krishna. Now here, in this particular first verse itself, Lord Krishna is referring to the three modes of material nature. And he is identifying that, the three modes of material nature when unmixed. So again, we will be looking at those characteristics that when they are unmixed. And the living entity does not mix with the three modes of material nature. However, it is influenced by the three modes of material nature. Now, as we always say, let's cover some of the aspects of the blessings, and in this particular chapter, what are the blessings that Lord Krishna has shared? So Lord Krishna, he actually provides blessings in an indirect form. So near the end of the chapter, Lord Krishna says, Jivo Jivo Minirmukto Gunesh Chasya Sambhavahe Mayeva Brahmana Purno Na Bahir Nantarascharet. So he's identifying that when one is freed from the subtle conditioning of the mind. So what is, the nature of the mind? We understand nature of human being is eternal summit of Lord Shri Krishna. What is the nature of mind? Mind constantly is accepting and rejecting. And under the influence of material nature, what are the three gunas, the three modes of material nature? Mode of goodness, sattva guna, mode of passion, raja guna, and mode of ignorance, tamo guna. So these three modes being influenced by them, living entity is constantly going through tribulations after tribulations in this material world and caught up in the cycle of birth and death. So when one is out of that conditioning, so one of the important aspects is to be able to engage the mind, right? One of the characteristics is to be able to engage the mind in remembering Lord Shri Krishna, which simply starts with the simple process of calling him out with love and with devotion. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So to start your devotion service with Shraddha, Sadhu Sangha, Bhajana Kriya, Anartha Nivritti Sya, so that's the science of devotional service. But it all starts with this simple prayer, calling out to the Lordship, calling out like a child calls out to its mother. And understand that this material world is a place of misery and it is temporary. So what's the nature of this material world? It is transforming, it's constantly transforming. So transformation is the nature of this material world. And Srila Prabhupada, once he was in New York and he looked at the billboard and he read this question. The billboard had this question printed across it. The question was, is there sex after life? And Srila Prabhupada laughed looking at it. It's like saying, see, the materialists, they are constantly seeking sense gratification. Among the topmost gratification is sex desire. And they are thinking that if there is sex in this life, and after death, of course, if there is sex, then it would be a suitable place. Then one doesn't have to fear death. And he then narrated a very nice story that once a man was, seeing his friend who was a drunkard. He was drinking. So he said, if you drink, you will go to hell. So his friend said, actually, my brother also drinks. His friend said, he will also go to hell. He's like, my neighbor also drinks. Then my friend said, he will also go to hell. Then the drunkard said, my sister also drinks. He said, she will also go to hell. He said, my father also drinks. The friend said, he will also go to hell. And he's like, if everyone is in hell, then it's not hell. Drunkard is giving this reasoning. It is heaven. So similarly, materialists, they are making a plan that if there is sex after life, then there is no need to fear death. And with this mindset, when they are approaching, Srila Prabhupada said, yes, they would have sex in the form of cats and dogs, right? Eat, sleep, mate, defend. These are the 4 basic facilities given to all living entities. So even as cats and dogs, they will be given these facilities. But what is the use of such life? This is abominable life, in the form of cats and dogs. Rather, we should understand what is the purpose of this human form of life, where we have higher intelligence. With higher intelligence comes responsibility. And we should make important inquiries. Why am I here? What's the purpose of this life? What is the goal of this life? Why is there suffering in this material world? Why, are people in anxiety, especially this pandemic time? Even today, means we go out and we see people panicking, are you maintaining the distance and so on, what? So it's very important for us to understand that this material world is a place where is danger at every step. Padam padam yat vibhadam natesham. So we have to be very, very careful. And so to be able to take proper care and not get bewildered, we take shelter at the lotus feet of Shishi Radha Badad Mohan, Shishi Radha Shyam Sundar, Shishi Radha Govindji. And so one has to somehow free oneself from the conditioning of the mind. And we talked about the process by engaging in devotional service and with the proper attitude. And from the moods of material nature, born of the material consciousness. So what is material consciousness? Thinking that the sense objects that are there are for our senses to enjoy, not realizing that even the material energy is an expansion of Lord Kṛṣṇa's. It's, his external potency, his external energy, and should be used in his service. So those who are intelligent, they engage even material energy in satisfying Lord Shri Krishna. And that should be the attitude. So the nature of mind has to be dovetail in Krishna consciousness. And one who can do this is called a cool person, right? Because they know the cool mantra. Anukulyasya sankalpa pratikulyasya varjadam rakshishyati iti vishvaso gopatitve varnam tata. So again, anukulyasya sankalpa pratikulyasya varjadam. Anukulyasya means accepting everything that is favorable to devotional service. Pratikulyasya varjanam is rejecting everything that is unfavorable to devotional service for our spiritual advancement. So those are the very important aspects. And by doing this, one can constantly remember Lord Shri Krishna and become a very smart person. Right? Smartavya satatam Vishnu vismartavya na jatu chit sarve vidhi nishedasya retayoreva kinkara. So, smartavya satatam Vishnu. Always remember Krishna. Vismartavya na jatu chit. Never forget Krishna. Sarve vidhi nishedasya. All the rules, regulations, prohibitions are just subservient to these 2 principles. So we have to understand that when we engage our mind in proper, mood, in lovingly serving the Lord, remembering Him, engaging in devotional service, we can attain perfection. So here in this particular chapter, various qualities have been specified. And what is the influence? How does a person, carry those aspects out under the 3 modes of material nature and under the Shuddha Sattva, which is transcendental to the 3 modes of material nature on that platform. So we have mode of goodness, Sattva Guna, mode of passion, Raja Guna, mode of ignorance, Tamo Guna, and above them, transcending the 3 modes of material nature is Vishuddha Sattva, which is, transcendental platform of a devotee. So we look from that particular perspective, who is engaged in devotional service. So here, various qualities have been discussed. And one of the qualities is austerity, right? So again, before we go ahead, it's very important to understand that when Lord Kṛṣṇa spoke on battlefield at Kurukshetra, right? At that time, the conches had already blown, and everyone has said, okay, this is inevitable, we are going to start fight. And at that time, Arjuna asked Lord Kṛṣṇa to take the chariot in the middle of the 2 armies. And Lord Kṛṣṇa took it So at that time, seeing that Arjun alone is coming to the middle of the two armies, and then there is conversation happening between Krishna and Arjun, Bhishma Pitama, he signaled his side that, don't. He wants to see what is the outcome. Why is Arjun coming in the center of the two armies? And what is going on? So he, signaled his side. And seeing Arjun going there, Yudhishthira Maharaj signaled his side in Bhima. Like they said, okay, Arjun has something he wants to take care. So let them have this conversation so that, once it is all clear, we'll get started. So yet at the same time, you can understand both the armies are standing ready to attack each other. So it's a very tense moment. And at that time, Arjun is bewildered. Vishad Yoga, right? Observing the two armies, he is bewildered and he surrenders at the lotus feet of Lord Kṛṣṇa and says that I am your disciple, please instruct me. And Lord Kṛṣṇa establishes him in his position as a Kshatriya and aligns his prescribed duties as a Kshatriya to that of his eternal religion as Sanatana Dharma. Here, there is no such hurry because Uddhav is a very close associate. And Lord Kṛṣṇa in the very first verse, how is he addressing Uddhav? He is calling him the best among men. So he is the best of men. So from that perspective, you can already understand when Lord Kṛṣṇa is saying this, so this Uddhav is his pure devotee. He is cousin of Lord Kṛṣṇa. He is a very close associate and he looks like Lord Kṛṣṇa. He wears the clothes passed on by Lord Kṛṣṇa. So, he wears the same Vajayanti Mala that Lord Kṛṣṇa has passed on. He wears a mukut with peacock feathers and he looks like Lord Kṛṣṇa. So sometimes people would get confused from a distance whether it is Krishna or Uddhav. But then he has a very submissive attitude. So from that, people could differentiate between Krishna and Uddhav as how they behaved. Uddhav was always in a very submissive attitude, very respectful and ready to serve. And he would be constantly serving Lord Kṛṣṇa. So here Lord Kṛṣṇa is returning back home and Uddhav is feeling this in the mood of separation. We talked about Viprarambha Bhav. He is inquiring that he wants to come. Yet at the same time, Lord Kṛṣṇa says, no, I would like to purify this planet Earth by the lotus feet of my devotee. And he's giving him the message to take to Badrikashram. So in this particular chapter, Lord Kṛṣṇa describes. So we will be covering some of the qualities that Lord Kṛṣṇa already covered with Arjuna because they are repeated, some of them. And then add on the qualities that Lord Kṛṣṇa describes in this chapter. So it becomes very engaging, but it is very interesting because these also, as we go through them, we'll also be looking at some of the wonderful pastimes of Srila Prabhupada and, Lord Chaitanya and the Acharyas. So the first quality is austerity. Austerity and penance is sometimes, they appear similar. Austerity is tapa. Penance is prayashchita. So there is a difference. So when you perform austerity, you are at current state, you want to purify further. Prayashchita or penance is something that you realize that there was a fault. So you focus on that specific, eradicating the reactions of that specific fault, eradicating that very fault itself from its root. And it's only in devotional service that you can do it properly, as we heard in the story of Ajamil. It is only by taking to devotional service that one can properly purify oneself. So in goodness, in the mode of goodness, one is performing austerity for God's sake, because only in the mode of goodness, among the three modes, material modes, one can realize the religious principles. If one is a householder, one can understand dharma, artha, kama, moksha, right? Religion, economic development, enjoyment, and then liberation. These are the four aspects of life that one has to cover. Yet, what is religion? What are the limbs of religion, if somebody asks? Then there are four limbs of religion. Dharma. What are those? Austerity, cleanliness, truthfulness, and mercy. And we have talked about different ages, how each of these limbs were deteriorating, and in Kali age, there is only truthfulness remaining, which is also diminishing in due course of time. However, one in the mode of goodness is able to come to that level. Now, when we talk about mode of goodness, passion, and ignorance, these three modes have influence on time, place, and based on time, place, and circumstances, and also Samay Kal Patra, we say. and also based on the attitude of a person. So these three modes among themselves are constant competition. So we talked about doing Brahm Muhurat time 2 hours before the sunrise. There is Brahm Muhurat time. From that point onwards, we have mode of goodness, Sattva Guna is visible. So that is, dominating. And then we all know, like 8 to 6, we go out to work, right? Or 9 to 5, sometimes we say. So when we are working, at that time, Rajoguna, mode of passion, economic development, that becomes the goal. And then in the evening, people are generally relaxing and seeking entertainment and so forth, and finally becoming dull and going to sleep, because Tamoguna is taking, control in normal people's life. In case of devotees who are constantly engaged, they are always at transcendental phase, and people who are, who have good qualities, who have the qualities under the modes of goodness, of course, those. So again, there is constant mixture happening, and one has to have the right mindset to be engaged in the right activity, to be influenced by the different modes. It is not that, oh, I have to engage in economic development. Well, you can continue to engage in, in the mode of goodness, if that is your prominent mode that is influencing you as a person, irrespective of the time. So again, there are different factors that play out. Austerity in the mode of goodness is, one is performing austerity for the sake of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Kṛṣṇa. So when one is performing austerity with that mood, one is doing it as a duty. Now that's what the difference between a devotee's mode and then, someone who is a Brahmana, his mode. So Brahmana, general Brahmana, who is in the mood of goodness, the religious principles become evident. They understand what the religious principles are. And so thinking it as a duty means, in a dutiful mode, they engage in performing various austerities for the satisfaction of Lord Shri Krishna. In the mode of passion, one performs austerity for sense gratification. Because of driven by pride, seeking name, fame, and glories, one performs austerities. One takes on, just like Hiranyakashipu. He was performing austerity to get the boon from Lord Brahma to become immortal. So sometimes people, just for their own senses and sense gratification, they focus on austerity from that perspective. And in case of ignorance, one who is influenced by the mode of ignorance, he performs austerity, great endeavor they do to, which is injurious to others, which is harmful to others. So they go through some very harsh conditions and harsh state to harm others. So basically their actions are always harmful to the human society, harmful to other living entities. So also, while in the mode of goodness, one is seeking to benefit everyone. While in the mode of passion, one is seeking to benefit oneself. So again, that's the difference. And in the transcendental phase, as a devotee, one engages in devotional service, and the austerity is performed in that state, lead to benefit to all humanity and all living entity at the transcendental level, so that they progress spiritually and they can also go back home, back to Godhead. That is the level of austerity performed by devotee. Now charity. Charity is performed in mode of goodness based on time, place, and circumstances. And when we talk about charity, of course, there is, the charity performed by devotees is always to satisfy Lord Shri Krishna. So Srila Prabhupada, he had a very close friend and he would converse with him, Bhagatji. So when Srila Prabhupada was telling Bhagatji that in half an hour he can easily cook for, 50 people, 50 to 100 people, Bhagatji said it is not possible. Srila Prabhupada said, okay, I can cook it. Let's put a bet of 100 rupees. Now, devotees don't bet, right? Devotees don't gamble. But Srila Prabhupada said this, so there is a deeper meaning. Why is he, engaging in a bet? And he is saying that let's bet 100 rupees. Then Bhagatji understood, being a close friend, he knew Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada. So he said, oh, no, I'm not going to bet with you, because if you win, you will take my 100 rupees and you will engage it in Lord Krishna's service, right? As a devotee. And if I win, you will give me your 100 rupees and somehow make me donate it back to Lord Kṛṣṇa so that it gets engaged in Lord Krishna's service. So whatever Srila Prabhupada had, he would anyway engage it in Lord Krishna's service, but he would always seek an opportunity to get others also engaged in Lord Krishna's service. So that is the beauty of Srila Prabhupada, as how in a subtle manner he would, try to enlighten other living entities, his close associates. So that is why devotee association is paramount. Because when we have devotee association, you know that your benefit is always there. You'll always be benefited this way or that way, no matter what. So here, in the mode of goodness, which is one of the material modes, one performs charity based on time, place, and circumstance. At right time, at the right place, in the right circumstances, engages in performing charity for the right purpose. So sometimes, people, they open hospitals and, ashrams and other places, and they donate to the temple. So that is charity. And they're performing this charity where they are performing so that others can benefit spiritually. And that's in the mode of goodness. Now, in the mode of passion, charity is performed with expectation. So somebody is opening a hospital or a nice place. So again, that is with this mindset that I will be glorified. They will put their name in big bold words, out there, that this is my ashram or my hospital, just to glorify themselves. They are seeking for name, fame, and glories. So that is in a mode of passion. And when austerity is impure and is performed at the wrong time, at the wrong place, for the wrong purpose, Hare Krishna, then it is in the mode of ignorance, because it increases irreligiousness. It harms the human beings and other living entities. Now, prescribed duties, based on the influence of the material nature, everyone is being influenced by various modes, and so their prescribed duties are there. So in the mode of goodness, which is the nature of a Brahman, yes, one is dutiful without expectation. So they perform their prescribed duties, their swadharma, even though they may not understand the purpose. Yet at the same time, they continue to do that. While in the mode of passion, one performs, prescribed duties, or actually one gives up their duties because of fear. Or sometimes they feel that it is troublesome. So just like, waking up during the Brahm Muhurta, sometimes people, they say, oh, it is too troublesome to get up in the morning to do japa. And that is because of the mode of passion. Whilst one can give up prescribed duties because of illusion, because of being dull and sleepy. So that is in the mode of ignorance. So the three modes are constantly influencing us, and they are constantly acting in this manner. However, it is not always true that, it is not always true that one who's a Brahman, he is definitely going to be, progressing, while one who is in the mode of passion, or even in a mixed mode of passion and ignorance, would not be the case. And in this regard, there are a couple of stories that come in the scriptures. So one Devashi Narad, he was wandering, and he came to a temple, and at the temple he saw a pujari very nicely performing deity worship, following all the rules and regulations. And when the Brahman saw Devashi Narad, he said, oh, my dear Devashi Narad, oh, what a fortunate, how fortunate I am that I am able to see you. And so where are you headed? And Devashi Narad said, actually, I am going to Vaikuntha. So he said, the Brahman said, oh, could you please ask Lord Shri Krishna that, when will I be able to return back home, back to Godhead? And Devashi Narad said, sure, why not? I will definitely ask. And as he is coming out of the temple, walking on his way, he sees that there is a cobbler sitting under a banyan tree. And he, the cobbler, seeing Devashi Narad, immediately glorifies him. And Devashi Narad is, he accepts the pranam and the obeisances of the cobbler. And the cobbler says, where are you headed? Devashi Narad says, oh, I am going to Vaikuntha. Oh, then the cobbler started glorifying Lord Kṛṣṇa, so Lord Vishnu. And he says, could you please ask him, when will I be returning back home? Now Devashi Narad said, yes, why not? And now when he went to Vaikuntha and he saw Lord Vishnu, there he inquired from him, when will the Brahman be able to come back? Lord Vishnu says, after 1,000,000 lives. So Devashi Narada was surprised that he was such a nice Brahman, mode of goodness. He must be coming back soon. But Lord Vishnu is saying that after 1,000,000 years, not now. Then he's asked, what about the cobbler? And Lord Vishnu says, oh, he will be coming back. This is his last birth. He'll be coming back right after this birth. Now Devashi Narada is even more surprised. So Lord Vishnu is seeing the, astonishment of Devashi Narada, he says, just tell them what I was doing and what I am doing right now. Just tell them and you will understand why this is so. Devashi Narada is a little perplexed, but he goes back to the temple and the Brahman asks, oh, so when will I be able to go back home? Did you ask that question? Are you coming from Vaikuntha? He said, yes, I am just coming from Vaikuntha, and Lord Vishnu has said that you will be coming back after 1,000,000 births. And the Brahman is like, no, 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 how could that be? I'm a Brahman. I must be coming back right after this birth. This should be my last. Then he says, what was Lord Vishnu doing? I don't think he went to Vaikuntha. What was he doing? So first of all, he doubted Devashi Narada. That was, shocking. Then second is he's asking that what did Lord Vishnu do when, Devashi Narada saw him? Devashi Narada said he was passing an elephant through the eye of a needle. And Brahma said, oh, this is not possible. And you didn't go to Vaikuntha, you're just pulling my leg. And so he ignored Devashi Narada, and Devashi Narada was surprised at this behavior. Well, after coming out of the temple, he's walking, and then, he sees the cobbler sitting under the banyan tree. And so the cobbler again sees Devashi Narada, glorifies him, and asks him, are you coming from Vaikuntha? How's my lordship? How is it doing? And then Devashi Narada gives him, in summary, that he went to Vaikuntha. And then the cobbler asks, did you ask the Supreme Lord, when will I be able to go back home? Devashi Narada said, actually, this is your last birth. You'll be able to go back home right after this birth. So the cobbler is in complete transcendental bliss. He is saying, oh, Lord is so wonderful. He is so merciful. He is so amazing that, he is so affectionate that he is calling this to be my last birth. And then he was curious, what was he doing? And then Devashi Narada said, actually, he was passing an elephant through the eye of a needle. And at that time, the cobbler started glorifying. He said, oh, he's so amazing, he can do anything he feels like. So Devashi Narada was feeling like, is he just faking it, or is it really that he's so serious? So, does he really mean it? So Devashi Narada said, aren't you surprised that he was doing this? He's like, no, 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 he can do anything. You see the banyan tree I'm sitting under, beneath the banyan tree? This tree was actually inside a seed. And there were many, many thousands of seeds that came from another banyan tree. And that banyan tree also came from a seed. So you can imagine within the seeds there are so many thousands and thousands of banyan trees Lord can put. What is, passing an elephant through the eye of a needle? So that itself tells us that, it is very important to understand what is the level of faith and what is your affection, how devoted you are at the lotus feet. So Devashi Narada understood why cobbler would be going back home right after that birth, and why the Brahman, who is in a mode of goodness, will be taking millions of births before he goes back home. That is why even the mode of goodness is a material mode. So we have to understand that one has to become a devotee. The cobbler had attained that level even though born in the mixed mode of passion and ignorance. So he was performing his prescribed duties while engaging in devotional service, glorifying the Lord. So similarly, when, in the mode of goodness, one is performing their duties, there is also an influence. And now this reminds me of another story where sometimes when we talk about, Brahmanas, Vaishyas, Shudras and so forth, and Kshatriyas, sometimes people have a specific mindset that this is going to be the result. But again, the devotion, at the lotus feet of Lord Shri Krishna, that completely sets everyone apart. Because all these prescribed duties, as per the modes of material nature that influence us, when they are aligned with our constitutional position, then we can transcend the three modes of material nature. Yet Srila Prabhupada made it very simple that one has to at least come to the level of cleanliness. Cleanliness is next to godliness. So rise up to that platform and then it becomes easier. Yet at the same time, Arjuna was a Kshatriya in a mode of passion. but he was able to align his swadharma, his prescribed duties, with his eternal religion, constitutional position, which is Sanatana Dharma. And so carrying out his activities for the satisfaction of Lord Shri Krishna, he was able to, attain perfection. So that is very important when we talk about the three modes of material nature and how taking to devotional service one can transcend the three modes of material nature. Now there is another beautiful story that comes in the Shastras about Sanatana Goswami. So once there was this Brahman, and a very austere Brahman, he needed money to marry off his daughters, so he worshipped Lord Shiva. So worshipping Lord Shiva, Lord Shiva came and gave him supreme benediction. He said, you should go to Sanatana Goswami, and Sanatana Goswami will be able to solve this problem that you have. He will be able to provide you a solution. So this Brahman went to Sanatana Goswami and he said that, oh my dear Sanatana Goswami, I have this situation, I need wealth, so please could you provide a solution? So Sanatana Goswami said, yes, I have parasmari, right, touchstone. You can go and pick it up, it's near the garbage. So the Brahman, he went near the garbage, he saw this touchstone. A touchstone is like, just by the touch, iron can be converted into gold. So he takes that and he thanks Sanatana Goswami and he's walking back. But as he's walking back, he's a Brahmana, he's an intelligent guy, right? So he thinks that Sanatana Goswami kept this touchstone near the garbage. It could not be the best thing that he has. He definitely has something which is much more precious than this. So he goes back to Sanatana Goswami and he says, oh my dear Sanatana Goswami, do you have something which is even more precious than this? Because you have this lying near, just like that in the open near the garbage. Sanatana Goswami says, yes, I do. And then Sanatana Goswami asks him, are you ready to accept this supreme benediction that I have? So the Brahman said, yes. Then Sanatana Goswami said that you will have to do something that I ask you. First go to river Yamuna and throw it, this parasmani, this touchstone, deep in the river, and then come back. And then I'll give you that supreme wealth that I have. So the Brahman goes, he throws the touchstone, comes back. And then when he comes back and he says, yes, I have thrown the stone, and Sanatana Goswami is smilingly, he says, now chant after me. Hare Kṛṣṇa, Hare Kṛṣṇa, Kṛṣṇa Kṛṣṇa, Hare Hare, Hare Rāma, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So last time when I was telling this story, somebody said, well, that Brahman, he didn't have to throw the stone in the river. So it was very interesting because, sometimes people have this tendency. So I was like, so what would you have done? My simple question was. So he said, actually, what I would have done is, sometimes when somebody gives you gold, and then they promise you that they will give you diamonds. So you don't have to throw away the gold. You can keep the gold and tell them that I have done whatever you asked me. And that now you can give me diamond and accept diamond also. Well, when you try to cheat Krishna, Krishna is the topmost cheater. He's number one in everything. So this way, actually, you would get cheated if you were to follow this. When I explained to him, he understood. So what happens is, if the Brahman, first of all, he was a Brahman, right? Mode of goodness. And he's very obedient, very true to his word. So that's why he does out. He carries out the instructions of Sanatana Goswami, taking them all in all. So he receives the supreme benediction, like we said. Like the story says that by the mercy of Lord Shiva and Sanatana Goswami, he was able to get the supreme benediction. And if somebody was to keep that parastone and then also receive Mahamantra, because of having kept the parastone, they would be like they are actually traveling in two boats. They have one leg seeking wealth in this material world in one boat, and then another leg in the devotional service, and both the boats are traveling in the opposite direction. So somewhere they will have to switch from one boat to another boat. Otherwise they will fall in between. So that way they cannot survive. If they switch over to the material boat, then of course they have lost the supreme benediction, right? So they cannot enjoy the transcendental bliss that comes from engaging in devotional service and to be able to transcend the three modes of material nature while establishing oneself in their constitutional position. So that is not possible. While if they take to devotional service, then anyway, that parasmani, the touchstone, is just like a garbage for them. So they should throw it away. So it is very important for us to understand that we should never try to, cheat, a sadhu or even Lord Kṛṣṇa. Sometimes people have this tendency because they get cheated in this process. And so that's why in this particular story, it is to understand that we get supreme benediction when we follow the instructions of an exalted devotees of the Lord or the Lordship himself. So in Bhagavad Gita, there are so many nice narrations, so many nice past instructions that we receive. Now comes to renunciation. So renunciation in the mode of goodness is performed just like his duty. So again, one of the difference between mode of goodness and the transcendental devotional phase is that in devotion one is performing with love, with attention, with care, with mindfulness. While in the mode of goodness one is performing as a duty. So there is a big difference between the two, right? When you go to work and you have to obey your boss, you're doing it dutifully. But when you come home and you serve your father or mother, then you are doing it out of love, out of that affection. So there is a world of difference between the two relationships. So that is the difference between the relationship in mode of goodness and in the transcendental mode. So renunciation is done without any hate or love. One does not have an attachment as well as does not reject things. They just carry it out, renounce things in a dutiful mode. While renunciation in the mode of passion is done with either under the fear. So under fear, someone sometimes is renouncing, because if they don't renounce things, then it may cost them their life or their wealth and fortune or their facilities. So that's one way. And they are constantly attached even when renouncing. So they may not be renouncing with the right mode. They may be doing it as a with a grievous mood. They may be renouncing. While in the renunciation, which is foolish, dull renunciation, not knowing what's what, at the wrong time, place, and circumstances, that is in the mood of ignorance. Now let's talk about knowledge. What kind of knowledge one acquires under the different modes of material nature? In mode of goodness, one looks at all the living entities equally, right? So this is also Lord Kṛṣṇa describes in Bhagavad Gita. Vidya Vinaya Sampanne Brahmane Gavi Hastini Shuni Chaiva Shvapake Cha Pandita Samadarshinaha. So Vidya Vinaya Sampanne, one who is endowed with the knowledge, and there is a beautiful picture here that one sees Lord as super soul in everyone's heart, and that everyone is very dear to the Lordship. That's why we always say that one should not even perform janaprad. One should not even commit offenses to the general populace. What to talk about devotees? A Vaishnava aparad is a mad elephant disease. But then sometimes even janaprad could rise to that level. So here, we are talking about renunciation. So again, knowledge is, in the mode of goodness, is seeing everyone equally. When the mood of a devotee, one sees everyone as very dear to Lord Kṛṣṇa, and understanding their benefit, one wants to take everyone back home, back to God. Just like Prahlad Maharaj, he prays to Lord Narasimha that I don't care about myself so much. I just want to, I'm, more concerned by this foolish, living entities who are constantly suffering in this material world. And I would like them to also go back home. So that is the mood of a Vaishnava. That a Vaishnava is a very compassionate soul, and especially compassionate towards the fallen living entities. And they are like desirees who can fulfill desires of all living entities. That's why we do the Vaishnava pranam very humbly, in a very respectful mode, right? Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. When we say this, again it is with this mood we call them, that the Vaishnavas are tarubhyascha. They are like the desire trees, and they are very affectionate to the they can fulfill desires of all living entities, and they're very affectionate to the fallen conditioned souls. So that is the mood of a devotee. While a person who is in the mode of goodness, he is just seeing everyone equally, understanding that everyone has Lord in their heart. Right? Shuni cheva shopakecha pandita samadashina. So Pandit always looks with equanimity, at equal vision, looks at all. A Brahman, a cow, an elephant, a dog and a dog eater. Different kind of living entities basically. While in the mode of passion, one is seeing, one differentiates between different kind of living entities. They're differentiating that this is a man, this is a woman, this is an American, this is an Indian, this is a African, this is a dog, this is a cat. So they are differentiating at different levels. This is white, this is black. So again, duality is very much prevalent in that mode. In the mode of passion, it is one's vision is constantly differentiating between different kind of living entities. This is a friend, this is an enemy. They even go at that level. So different levels. In the mode of ignorance, one is so much engaged in whatever the activity they are engaged that they are considering those to be all in all. So they have no true knowledge. They do not differentiate it, and they are just engrossed in what they are doing, without even understanding that is it really good for me or not. And that is sometimes people, when they are continuing to do, they have been doing this job day in and day out, just like a clockwork, right? Without really understanding where they're going. They're just looking to survive. That's in the mode of ignorance. So again, one has to be very, very careful. Now, what kind of work one performs under the three modes of material nature? So work in the mode of goodness is regulated, right? People perform just sufficient work to carry out their livelihood and focus on religious principles, following religious principles, carrying out their duties, engaging in charity, sacrifice and austerities, which purifies oneself. And finally, one comes to the level that they have this opportunity to engage in devotional service. So again, there is only an opportunity. It is not that one has come to this level that they have become a devotee. No, one has an opportunity to take to. So at that level, they have the opportunity to become faithful. So by taking to the process of Shraddha, they can engage in sadhu sangha. And so under the guidance of a spiritual master, one can engage in bhajan kriya. And it is in bhajan kriya. Bhajan kriya can also be translated into devotional service. Bhaj is much bigger than worship. Worship is just an element within bhaj. And so it can also be referred to as devotional service. Kriya is service, right? Activity. What kind of activity? So service is a kind of activity. So by carrying out devotional service, one is purified. So anartha nivritti happens. All unwanted things, they are driven away. So one becomes pure at heart. And this starts with a very simple process of calling out to the Lordship. Just like a child calls out to his parents, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. And to do this, there is no hard rules and regulations. All one has to do is chant with attention, try to pronounce it as clear as possible, try to hear it with attention, and engage the mind in hearing every word, and in the right mood, with that loving crying out mood. I was reading this nice lecture by His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj, and he was saying that back in the days, Srila Prabhupada, when he was His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj, he was engaged as a pujari in pujari seva. So he was ready to every time serve Srila Prabhupada and just wanted to satisfy his spiritual master. So once Srila Prabhupada said, start preaching, we need more devotees. So Radhanath Maharaj, he, was wondering how is he going to preach, because he only had one dhoti and that had holes in it, and then he only had one blanket from World War II times, from the soldiers, and that also had holes in it, and he was wondering how will he be able to do. When it came for qualification, you need to kind of be able to preach. You should be able to take the message very expertly. And he was wondering that he had just attended the one semester in his junior college, and didn't do much study afterwards, but he was amazed that by following, just in the process of satisfying Srila Prabhupada, now that he has been going from university to universities and defeating professors and all these great scientists, when he is discussing this transcendental knowledge and everyone is, so much engrossed in following his footsteps and calling him as an ideal, guru, and so they want to follow him, they want to desire. So this is the potency when one carries out his spiritual master's instructions with full heart, with full endeavor, with full dedication, with that mood of devotion that let me try my best. So he himself is a living example here. Srila Prabhupada was a living example when he, came all the way to America to give Bhagavatam to everyone. So when he was being asked that, are you going to America? He said, no, Bhagavatam is going to America. I'm just going along with it. Because Bhagavatam is not different from Lord Kṛṣṇa. So that is the mood of a devotee. We have to understand what is the level of mood. And if you look at Bhagavad Gita, Lord Kṛṣṇa is, pretty stern. He's basically saying, Sarva dharmam parityajya mam ekam sharanam vajaham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshishchashmi mashacha. So he's first saying, abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I will deliver you from all your sinful reactions. Do not fear. Mashacha. So he is asking us first to surrender. While when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the golden avatar, he appeared, and he appeared in the mood of Radharani as a eternal mother who's very affectionate. So he immediately opened the treasure house of Golok Vrindavan, the topmost spiritual planet. And he immersed the whole planet in the chanting of the holy name. Hare Kṛṣṇa, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. And Nityananda Prabhu is not different from, he's the Adi Guru, right, from Balaram. So he is going, every town and village, and he's asking everyone to please chant. He's even approaching Jagai and Madhai, who actually hurt him in the process. But he is even delivering the fallen souls. That's why Narottam Das Thakur in his prayers, he sings, Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Daya karo more, tum bin ke dayalu jagat samsare, patita pavana hetu tab avataro, mosama patita prabhu na pae bearo. So Srila Narottam Das Thakur, he is singing that Lord Kṛṣṇa, who's appearing as Mahaprabhu, Chaitanya, Shri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, please have mercy on me. And he's calling himself Patita. So that is the mood of a devotee. Such an exalted personality as Srila Narottam Das Thakur is calling that I'm the most fallen, so you must deliver me. So we can understand that there is hope for us, and all we have to do is to accept this message and take to the chanting of the holy name. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rāma, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. And so when one is working in the mode of goodness, one is carrying out the regulated services, prescribed duties, right? And not engaging in over-endeavor. But in the mode of passion, one is trying to satisfy their senses, they're seeking sense gratification. So they end up over-endeavoring in the process. So such a work is like an over-endeavor, which, again, we talked about pavarga. Pa, bha, bha, ma. So pa is for parishram, right? This is like hard labor. One engages in hard labor. And pa is pena. So one, just like a horse, when very tired, it starts to foam in its mouth. So when one is engaged in over-endeavor, the foaming of the mouth happens, right? That's a symptom. So such symptoms show up because of over-endeavor. Bha is bewilderment, bhramit. So one becomes bewildered because they are trying to over-endeavor. They're doing so much hard work, and they are actually getting tired but not seeing the result. So now the next is they become bhay. So they become fearful in the process. First bewildered, then they become fearful. And then in due course of time, ma happens, which is mrityu, death. So in the mode of passion, it's such a sad state when one has to engage in over endeavor, which takes away this precious human form of life, and they fall down from that state, not attaining the goal. So one has to be very, very careful because of the mode of passion as well. While in the case of ignorance, one disregards the prescribed duties, scriptural injunctions, and engages in work which is harmful to others, right? In the name of jihad, people go and they, cause so many, uh, you know, self-bombs and this and that, all those kind of abominable activities they engage in, thinking that they are doing religious activities. That's actually in the mode of ignorance. They are actually harming themselves and everyone else around them. So such is the sad state of affairs in this material world. Well, a worker in the mode of goodness, has no false ego. He understands that I am a living entity, right? And that I should engage in service. So he has this opportunity to understand the religious principles, and that opportunity exists because it still is a material mode of goodness. One has to engage in devotional service so that one can rise above the three modes of material nature and come to the transcendental stage, which is our true state as constitutional position as Jivera Sarupaya Krishna Nityadas, as an eternal servant of Lord Kṛṣṇa. While a worker in the mode of passion is constantly engaging in sense gratification, so they are engaging in activities so as to satisfy their senses. They are attached to the fruits of their results, so they engage in fruitive activities. So all the activities are oriented towards what's going to be the result, right? So that is the sense gratification aspect. While in the case of ignorance, mode of ignorance, one is influenced, then they engage in activities which are against the scriptures. And the result is very harmful for themselves as well as for others. Now, what is understanding in mode of goodness? One in the mode of goodness understands right from wrong, and they have proper understanding that this is right and this is wrong and I should engage in this. So they are not saying things as black and white, they're saying the endeavors, what is the right endeavor, what is the dutifully their prescribed duties, and they should be performed. While in the case of mode of passion, one is confused what is right and what is wrong, and they are seeing it from their vision, right? So that is also very important, that they are saying it, that if this is going to give me sense gratification, then I engage in it. If it's not going to give me sense gratification, then I'm not going to engage in it. That's why demigod worshippers are, constantly being condemned, because they are not worshipping demigods to satisfy those demigods, understanding that these demigods are actually devotees of Lord Kṛṣṇa. Rather, they want to get benedictions to gratify their senses. So they are seeking sense gratification. That's why it is abominable, because that mindset. Two persons could be engaged in same activity, but have a gulf of difference in their attitude. And that is where the main difference lies. And so again, being confused, they do not know what's right and what's wrong, and they are driven by their senses and the fruitive activities that they are engaged in. In the mode of goodness, one does just the opposite. What is irreligious, they think that's religion. What is religion, they think it's irreligion. So they, are constantly deluded. And in the conditioned life, we know that this is one of the four defects, right? Propensity to be deluded. Determination in the mode of goodness is steadfast, it is rightly set, and it is true to one's nature, right? So they are on the right path as a duty-bound person, while a devotee is love-bound. With that thread of love, he is pulling Krishna. While a duty-bound person is obeying, just like one obeys boss at work. So that is the difference between the mode of goodness and the devotional service, which is transcended to the three modes of material nature. And the determination in the mode of passion is again towards fruitive activities. And in ignorance, it is just unintelligent. Now, what is happiness in the three modes of material nature? We all want to be happy, right? Anand bhaya abhyasat. Living entity is always seeking happiness. So, what is happiness in the mode of goodness? So, in the mode of goodness, happiness is like poison in the beginning, but nectar at the end. But in the mode of passion, it is nectar in the beginning and becomes poison at the end. And in the mode of ignorance, it is poison in the beginning and poison at the end, constantly, because they are in this foolish, ignorance, dark state that they do not know what's what. They actually promote religion. So they engage in an endeavor and they have harsh, realities to face because of the engagements and the understanding and the knowledge that they have. In the mode of goodness, one worships the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now, who does one worship in the mode of passion? In the mode of passion, one can worship demigods, even some important person, or even different kind of higher living beings, because they're seeking fruitive results. So they are always seeking sense gratification. So their worship is also tainted with that. While in the mode of ignorance, one desires violence. So it is very important. So again, to be able to overcome the three modes of material nature, we have to understand that we have to transcend the three modes of material nature. And to be able to transcend the three modes of material nature, one has to engage in devotional service. And devotional service is not a right. That's another factor. It is a great privilege. And we have to beg to get this devotional service. And the begging process is very simple. Just raise your hand and chant, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So again, what is the quality, of a person in mode of goodness? That one is self-control. They are controlling their senses for purification purposes. They're performing purificatory activities. While the quality of a person in mode of passion is lusty. They are lusty by nature, so they are kind of austerity or charity they're performing there, performing for name, fame, and glories, and to be able to enjoy their senses, feel proud of their activities, and being glorified by others, seeking others to worship them. So that is their mood. While in the case of ignorance, one becomes angry and turns to violence, and that is the quality one shows by their activities and by their nature. Now, what is the virtue one contains under the three modes of material nature? In the mode of goodness, one shows good qualities, right? He is performing like a ideal human being. He's regarding others with equal vision. He understands what's right and what's wrong from that perspective. While in the case of mode of passion, one is influenced by prestige, one is driven by pride, and so they are seeking the virtue based on those qualities. In the mode of ignorance, one is constantly struggling, and in that struggle, they're feeling constant anxiety and fearfulness. So one has to understand that even the virtue, it differs, and the consciousness is, of course, we have discussed this before, is in the mode of goodness, one is looking at everyone as equal, with equal vision, understanding everyone is a living entity and has Paramatma, the super soul in everyone's, has in the heart. So Lord expands as his Paramatma feature. And he is in your heart, and he is in my heart, and he is every living entity's heart. So I can be here, you can be there, but Lord Kṛṣṇa is everywhere in his super soul expansion form. While in the consciousness, in the mode of passion it discriminates in different kind of bodies, different states, different positions. So again, and by doing that, they treat everyone differently. And in the case of ignorance, they do not know what's what. So they are dull, they're sleepy, they don't know how to behave, and they sometimes become too rash in their behavior. Now, religion in the three modes of material nature also has its own influence that, in mode of goodness, one engages in, serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead and follows the religious principles and understands. He has an opportunity to understand religious principles and the essence behind it. And then finally have an opportunity to take to devotional service. So that is an important aspect. While a religion of a person in the mode of passion is driven by lusty desires, by seeking sense gratification, by engaging in fruitive activities. And so there is constant, and over endeavor and causing anxiety, and finally taking away the very life. And in the case of ignorance, basically they think that irreligion is religion, religion is a religion. So they are completely opposite. And so they harm themselves as well as everyone who's around them. What is the state of mind of a person in the three modes of material nature? So in the mode of goodness, one is awake, right? So again, there is awake, sleep, and deep sleep. We have talked about this in the past as well. So the state of mind is that mind is just like a person who's awake, they know what's going on. So that is how a person in the mode of goodness feels. In the mode of passion, one is in a sleep, so in a dreaming state. And a dreaming state saying things as they want to say, but there is at least something. And in the mode of ignorance, it is deep sleep, which is like dreamless sleep. So that is the case of mode of ignorance. Now, what is the different destinations one attains by following the three modes of material nature? That's also very interesting. In the case of mode of goodness, one rises to the heavenly planets. Now, sometimes people feel this is a very interesting position. We'll be looking a little deeper into it. While the destination of a person in the mode of passion is earthly planets, and the destination of a person in the mode of ignorance is hellish planets. Now, in the hellish planets, there is constant suffering. In the earthly planets, one may take birth, but one is not guaranteed in the mode of passion that one will get human form of life, because there are also other conditions that become evident. Just like we talked about Srila Prabhupada reading the question on the billboard, is there sex after life? Srila Prabhupada said yes. Next life, they will get an opportunity to be born as cats and dogs, and they will have these four basic facilities: eat, sleep, mate, defend. So they can, enjoy sex after, this life. But that's an abominable life. So you are actually treading downward. You are giving up this precious human form of life, trying to get a cat's and dog's life. That's not very intelligent. That's actually foolishness. So one should be very, very careful. Now, heavenly planets. Sometimes people say, oh, if I'm in the mode of goodness, I'll go to heavenly planets. So yes, if you go to heavenly planets, get a very nice position, you're a demigod. Now, one of the things is, how do demigods die? Very few people realize this, that they actually fall from the heaven, and they are Brahma Rakshasas. These are other living entities. These are Brahmanas who had not attained perfection. So in their next birth, they become Brahma Rakshasas. They are very powerful, hobgoblin kind of Rakshas. And they eat the body of a falling demigod. So a demigod, when falling down from the heavenly planets, is eaten alive by various Brahma Rakshasas. And they later on come in the form of drop on the salty planet, and then finally in the form of grain, they again go through the cycle in the human form of life and so forth. So again, that is like, you're constantly in this Ferris wheel. You're going up and then you're finally coming down. So whatever goes up finally comes down, unless it completely goes out of the domain, right? It leaves its orbit, which is only by the influence of devotional service. So just like we say that when I launch a satellite has to come out of the orbit of the planet Earth, there has to be that extra thrust. And that extra thrust is nothing else but devotional service, which starts with the chanting of the holy name. Hare Kṛṣṇa, Hare Kṛṣṇa, Kṛṣṇa Kṛṣṇa, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Now, what are the kind of residences one have under the three modes of material nature? The residence in the forest is said to be in the mode of goodness. So the rishis, they used to have their ashrams in the forest, not in the towns and cities, because this mode of goodness is prevalent. While in towns and cities, people have houses where the mode of passion, there's constant hustle bustle going on, there's a lot of trade going on around you, and a lot of endeavors are going on. So people who are influenced by the mode of passion, they normally try to go for houses, residences in town and city. And then, what is the kind of residence one has in the mode of ignorance? Somebody could ask. This is like clubs and casinos, those kind of places. They literally live at these places. Every time they come out of work, they directly head over to the clubs or the casinos. This is in the mode of ignorance. And this is, they're falling down as well as harming others as well in the process. Now, the faith in the mode of goodness leads to a spiritual life, while in the case of passion, being driven by the fruitive activities, they are constantly looking for fruitive work. So again, the faith is, I need to be happy, so they're keeping themselves in the center. While in the mode of goodness, one actually keeps Lord Krishna in the center. And they engage in bhajan kriya, which is like deity worship, right? The brahmanas in the mode of goodness, they engage in deity worship. So when you engage in deity worship, Srila Prabhupada said that when we worship Radha Krishna, Shishi Radha Krishna, or Shishi Radha Madan Mohan, Shishi Radha Shyam Sundar, the deities of the lordships, we should always look at them with awe and reverence, and we should perform it very carefully, considering them as, Lakshmi Narayan form. And Lakshmi Narayan Vaikuntha form, they are worshipped with awe and reverence. That should be the mood. So a Brahmana should worship with that mode. And when we further elevate and have an opportunity, then we have the deities we become attached to, and we perform them with more care, with more love, with more attention, and more, precision, and really taking care of them with gratitude that they have given us this wonderful opportunity of human life so that we can go back home, back to Godhead. And we constantly pray to them. So that is the mood of a devotee, much higher than the mood of a Brahmana in the mode of goodness. So that's why in the scriptures again and again it has been said that a Vaishnava is much higher than a Brahmana state. And Vaishnava it can be from any of the, categories, in any of the, like a Kshatriya, like a Arjun, he was a Kshatriya in mode of passion, yet at the same time he was a pure devotee. So that is there. And what kind of food one eats in the, being influenced by the three modes of material nature? In the mode of goodness, the food is nourishing, it is juicy, it is fatty, it enhances one's life. In the mode of passion, it is, constant with pleasure and pain. It's sometimes too hot, too bitter, sometimes it's too, cold and so forth. While in the case of ignorance, the food is unclean, it is unpleasant, it has been stale, and right. So that is a kind of food. But in case of devotees, Lord Krishna, they follow Lord Krishna's instructions. Patram pushpam phalam toyam yo me bhaktya parachati tadham bhaktya upritam ashnami prayatatmana. That what should one offer to Lord Shri Krishna? So we accept, the devotees accept only the remnants of Lord Krishna's. So again, but what can we offer him as bhoga? That is, Lord Krishna is telling. Patra pushpa phala toyam. Patra is leaf, pushpa is flower, phal is fruits, and then toyam is water. So one can offer, and yome bhaktya prayachati. So one can offer with devotion, a devotee with love is offering. So that's why devotion has been called out twice by Lord Shri Krishna, because that's the fifth subtle ingredient there, which is mindfully we are giving and serving Lord, we are offering this bhoga with love. And when we offer it with love, Lord accepts it. He says that I would accept it. And a devotee would offer it to me with devotion. So with devotion is a subtle fifth element that we should focus on. And so such remnants that we receive, prasad, is also called mercy. It purifies us spiritually so that we can happen, when the anartha nivritti happens, and we can re-establish ourselves in our position as eternal servant of Lord, and as loving children we can engage in giving pleasure to our Supreme Father, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna. So the food is nourishing in the case of, but it is pleasure and pain in the case of passion, mode of passion. And what happens? What kind of forces become strong when one is influenced by the three modes of material nature? That is also very important. So in case of goodness, the demigods, they become very powerful. And demigods are the administrators of this world, and even the person who is carrying out activities in the mode of goodness starts to show demigods-like qualities. And devotees, they are said to attain demigods-like qualities. So that is, auspiciousness increases everywhere. However, in the case of mode of passion, one in the mode of passion, what kind of forces become strong? Demoniac forces, they become strong. So we have to be very, very careful that in the mode of passion, demonic forces become strong. and that is going to cause havoc, right? And in the mode of ignorance is the most wicked forces, not just demoniac. Demoniac is at least seeking sense gratification, but most wicked is that they are not going to cause harm to others, they're going to harm even to ones they don't have to deal with. So they are very not even discriminatory, they are just harming everyone and anyone. So that's why mode of ignorance is a very fearful state. Yet at the same time, one can transcend, no matter which particular mode is influencing us, we can transcend all three modes just by taking to the devotional service, which starts with the chanting of the holy name. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So Lord Krishna is packing so much knowledge in this particular chapter. Yet at the same time, why is this happening, right? And this is also, Lord Kṛṣṇa reveals that it is because of this illusory energy of mind, external energy. Prakate kriya marani gune karmani sarvesha ahankara vimuddhatma kartaham iti manyate. So he is saying that this material energy of mind, prakate kriya marani, right? Gune karmani sarvesha. So again, the living entity being bewildered, being deluded by this material energy of mind is engaging in various kind of activities. And so when a person is thinking that this material energy, so that, but what's this material vision? That we are thinking that various sense objects that we are seeing in this, our senses are engaging in, we are thinking that they are for our pleasure. When we think, then our mindset is material. When we understand actually this is all an expansion of the energies of Lord Kṛṣṇa, so whatever is appearing has to be engaged in his service. Now that is spiritual consciousness. Anukulena Krishna Anushilanam. And we should serve Lord Kṛṣṇa as he desires, following in the footsteps of the Acharyas, Anushilanam. Right? So this is very important for us to understand. And so ahankar vimuddhatva, so one gets influenced by the false ego, right? One forgets one's identity. So identity is sometimes referred to as ego. So false ego is we are identifying with the body, not with our true self as living entities, not with the soul. So that such a person is vimuddhatma, he is bewildered because of the influence of the three modes of material nature, and thinking that he is the one carrying out various activities, while actually all the activities are being carried out by the material nature, by following the desire that the living entity we have. So that is an important aspect, that okay, it is the desire a living entity has, which has been sanctioned by the super soul sitting in the heart, and who is sitting as overseer and permitter. Lord Kṛṣṇa as super soul, as Paramatma, sitting in every living entity's heart as overseer and permitter, he sanctions some. When he sanctions, then the material senses, they carry those desires out. So it is very important to understand that we should have the right kind of desires, and the right kind of desire is to serve Lord Kṛṣṇa instead of serving our senses. Because when we serve Lord Kṛṣṇa, who is Rishikesha, master of the senses, our senses will automatically be satisfied. Very simple process. Just like when we eat food, we want to become strong, we eat food, the food goes in our stomach, yet at the same time from stomach it is dissipated to all the limbs and we feel the strength and rejuvenation. So that is the process. When we want to make a tree very strong, then we water the root of the tree. We give it that proper light. We follow the process. And in the case of human beings, for us, the process is by engaging in devotional service, by taking to the chanting of the holy name. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. And Lord Kṛṣṇa says, Maya dakshena prakriti suyate sa characharam hetu na nena kanteya jagad vipri vartate. This material nature, which is one of my energies. Again, Lord Kṛṣṇa again and again telling us in Bhagavad Gita that this material energy is under his instructions. She is carrying out his instructions. So it is constantly working under Lord Kṛṣṇa's directions. and it's producing all these moving and non-moving living entities, right? Non-moving beings. So moving beings are, we have 2 legs, 4 legs, different kind of living entities, humans, aquatics, insects, reptiles, and so forth. And then the non-moving entities are the plants, the trees, the hills, the mountains. They are also living entities, right? And it is the rule of the material nature. That's why law of nature, nature's law, we kind of refer, that this material world is created and annihilated under its influence. So transformation is a characteristic of material nature. Material universes are constantly transforming. So that is a very important aspect, that nothing is lost in the process. Material elements just take different forms. They're constantly transforming. Yet at the same time, we can engage this material energy in Lord Kṛṣṇa's service and transform our life to establish ourselves. Now that is a great trait. By giving up material things and attaining spiritual treasure, spiritual wealth, the highest benediction, to be able to, develop the love of Godhead and go back home, back to Godhead. Now that is a great benediction. That is the goal of life that we want to attain. That's like taking out a thorn with a thorn. So, a thorn which is hurting, but you can use another thorn and needle to take out a thorn that has pierced your foot or something. So we have had those experiences that when, there is a wood chip that goes in our skin, so at that time we just use a needle to take it out. So that's like taking a thorn out of thorn with a thorn. So we are using the human body to get out of this cycle of birth and death. That's a great opportunity for us. So one, when engages in devotional service, what happens? How do we change, right? So every time we talk about, Jivera Saruphoya Krishnena Nityadas, Krishnena Tatashte Shakti Bedhabed Prakash. So again, the second line talks about we are the marginal energy, Krishnena Tatashte Shakti. So just like, you see at the river, there is a bank, above the waters, and then there is part of the land underwater. So right at the edge is the tata, right? So sometimes, when there is a lot of rains and the river swells, it kind of rises up, then the land goes under the water. So that is us coming under the influence of material energy. And when the water recedes, at that time we are under the influence of, we are open. So similarly, Mahatmanastu mam pata devim praktimashraya Bhajantyānanya manaso gyatva bhutadim avyayam. So Lord Kṛṣṇa says that the Mahatmanas, the devotees, my pure devotees, right? Maha, Atma, great souls, right? What do? Devim Prakritimashya. They are the influence of my Devim Prakriti, which is Yoga Maya, Radharani's expansion. So he is under his internal potencies influence. So the living entities who are engaged in devotional service, they are, and they are constantly bhajantyanamas. So they are constantly engaging in his devotional service, knowing that he is bhutadim. So among all the living entities, he is the oldest of all living entities, right? And avyayam, and that is inexhaustible. So such are the great souls who engage in, his devotional service, and so they take the shelter of Radharani instead of Maya Devi. And what happens when one is such engaged? Satatam kirtayanto mam yatantasya drinavataha namasyantasya mam bhaktya nitya yukta upasate. So Lord Kṛṣṇa is revealing that always chanting my glories. A devotee is constantly chanting Lord's glories and endeavoring with great determination. Satatam kirtayanto mam yatantasya sudrinavataha. So that is with great determination. And constantly bowing down before him. So again, we bow down in front of Lord Shri Krishna. Such great souls perpetually worship me, right, with devotion. So again, such are the glories of devotion. Lord Kṛṣṇa himself is saying that how one quickly advances in their life. But one who does not take to this path, what is the destination? Being influenced by the 3 modes of material nature. That is also there, right? So nastir buddhi ayuktasya na cha yuktasya bhavana na cha bhavantah shantir ashantasya kutaha sukham. So one is not connected with Supreme. Na asti buddhir ayuktasya. One who does not have proper intelligence. Yukta means again proper intelligence, transcendental intelligence is the proper intelligence. Na chayuktasya bhavana, who does not have proper, steady mind. So bhavana also refers to feeling, right? And feeling is, how one behaves. So that behavior is determined with the mind, so one does not have a steady mind. So one who does not have transcendental intelligence, does not have a steady mind, of course, there is no possibility of peace, right? And when there is no peace, how can there be happiness? That is a simple process being identified. So one gets bewildered in this case. Now, sometimes people ask, like, how can one get bewildered in this case, right? So that is actually given in the second chapter in Bhagavad Gita. Dhyayato vishayan pumsah sangasteshu pajayate sangha sanjayate kamaha kamat krodho bhijayate. So, dhyayate vishyantam. So, when we're focusing our mind on some specific sense objects, we develop attachment, right? Sangasteshu vijayate. Attachment develops. And because of attachment, sangha sanjayate kama. Because of that attachment, constant thinking of meditating on that sense object, attachment develops. And sangha sanjayate kamaha, so that lust develops, right? From attachment comes lust. And kamat krodho bijayate, and from lust comes anger. Anger develops. Krodhad bhavati sammoha, sammoha smriti vibhramaha. Smriti bhramsad buddhi nasho, buddhi nashat pranashyati. So Lord Kṛṣṇa is revealing that krodhad bhavati sammoha. So from this anger, when we are angry, we do not know what's what because we get bewildered. So it is very important that we should not get angry, because when we get angry, we lose ourselves. We lose our very being. So we become bewildered. And when one becomes bewildered, sammoha smriti bhamsat. So one's memory is destroyed, is completely diluted. And smriti bhamsat buddhi nasho, when becomes one's memory is bewildered, then one's intelligence is lost. Buddhi nashat pranashyati, and when the intelligence is lost, one falls down. And one gets entangled in the three modes of material nature. And as we studied today, that even the mode of goodness is one of the material modes. So we have to be very, very careful in our life and take to devotional service, because when we take to devotional service, even though we may be engaging in the same activities like another person, but there will be a great difference, which is also explained in Bhagavad Gita. Ya nisha sarva bhutanam tasyam jagrati samyami. Yam yam jagrati bhutani, yasyam jagrati bhutani, sa nisha pashyato munehe. So what is night for all the living entities is like day to the samyami, to a muni, one who is controlling their senses, to a devotee. And what is day to the living entities is actually night for a muni, one who is, self-controlled, self-realized person. So one takes to devotional service, one becomes self-realized, realizes one's position, and understands that our purpose in this life, the goal of this life, is to attain love of Godhead. So that is the goal. And to attain love of Godhead, what is? So again, sambandha abhideya prayojana. We have to understand what is our relationship with Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa. That we are eternal soul and He is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and we eternally are His servants. So that is our relationship, like a father and son. That's the loving relationship we have with Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa. And what is the abhideya? What is the process? The 9 process of devotional service. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Pada Sevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atma Nivedanam. Shravanam, hearing about the glories of Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa. Kirtanam, chanting the glories of Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa. Smaranam, remembering Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa. Pada Sevanam, serving the lotus feet of Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa. Archanam, performing the deity worship, worshipping Lord Shri Krishna. And when we read Srimad Bhagavatam, read Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says that we are worshipping Him by our intelligence. So that is such a wonderful thing. Vandanam, singing prayers in the glorification of Lord Shri Krishna, serving Him like a servant, dasyam, is serving like His servant, and Sakyam, being friend to Lord Shri Krishna, and Atma Nivedana, surrendering everything in serving Lord Shri Krishna in His service. At His lotus feet, we are serving everything. So the 9 process of devotional service are there, and they all start, and many of these are automatically captured when we chant the holy name. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So my dear devotees, it is such a nice way we understand that it is so easy for us to take to devotional service and avoid this over endeavor, and we can simply transcend the 3 modes of material nature, transcend the material energy itself, and begin the real life of loving devotional service at the lotus feet of Shri Shri Radha Madan Mohan, Shri Shri Radha Shyam Sundar, Shri Shri Radha Govind Ji, Shri Shri Radha Gopal Ji. So again, we should, take to this process, and Srila Prabhupada again and again, give in his transcendental purports this instruction that we should consider this as a matter of urgency, because our life is like a drop of water rolling off of a lotus leaf. So life is very flickering, and we have to be very, very careful to use our time very wisely, because every moment is a present, right? That's why the present moment is called present, because it's a great gift we have received. And this gift is meant to serve, the supreme giver, Lord Shri Krishna. So please take to the chanting of the holy name, please engage in devotional service. And this is where we would like to end this chapter, understanding the various influences of the 3 modes of material nature, and how we can easily transcend them and engage in devotional service. Please join us for Narasimha Devati. Hare Krishna. Namaste Narasimhaya, Namaste Narasimhaya, Prahlad Lad Daine, Prahlad Lad Daine, Hiranyakashipu Vakshaha, Hiranyakashipu Vakshaha, Shilatankanakalaye, Shilatankanakalaye, Ito Nasingha Parato Nasingha, Ito Nasingha Parato Nasingha, Yato Yato Yami Tato Nasingha, Yato Yato Yami Tato Nasingha, Vahe Nasingha Hridaye Nasingha, Vahe Nasingha Hridaye Nasingha, Narasingha Madim Sharanam Prapadya, Narasingha Madim Sharanam Prapadya, Tava Kar Kamalavare Nakham Adbhuta Shingham, Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanu Bringam, Keshavadhita Narhari Rupa, Jai Jagadish Hare, Jaya Jagadish Hare, Jaya Jagadish Hare, Tava Kar Kamalavare Nakham Adbhuta Shingham, Dalita Hiranyakashipu तनुभृङ्गम् केशवधीता नरहरि रूप जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय नरसिंह देव जय नरसिंह देव जय नरसिंह देव जय नरसिंह देव जय प्रहलाद महाराज जय प्रहलाद महाराज जय प्रहलाद महाराज जय प्रहलाद महाराज जय जय प्रभुपाद 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 जय जय प्रभुपाद जय जय गुरुदेव 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 जय जय गुरुदेव नित्य गौर हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल नित्य गौर हरि बोल। भक्त विघ्न विनाशक नचिकेते भगवान की जय, प्रहलाद महाराज की जय, श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय, श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय, अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय, निताय गो प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल। हरे कृष्णा।